The Marino Show.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Marino Show. This episode is literally going to the dogs. You're going to see dogs running in and out of the shot, but there's a reason for that. I'm talking with Mike Piesinger with Divine Canines today, and you're actually on the advisory board, you're a volunteer, and you lead the fundraising arm of the organization, right?
That's correct.
First of all, tell me about Divine Canines and the importance of that organization here in Austin.
Sure. So we are a local homegrown organization, 18 years old. We are a volunteer nonprofit. Our primary focus is canine therapy services. We visit a wide array of places, work in schools and hospitals, correctional facilities, hospice, Fort Hood, you name it, a broad span. And before the pandemic, we were visiting about 200 locations in the Austin area on a regular basis. So we're slowly getting back, different locations have different protocols and all that, but we're finally being able to go back out and volunteer, which was really tough for us during the pandemic because there were so many great things we could be doing, and also our dogs miss it. They love going out.
We have, 3 here today,
We do.
Scotch, and they're your dogs,
Correct.
Scotch, Whiskey, and
Shiner,
which I love all of that. And that will tie into the fundraising part when we get to that here in a little bit. But for you, as somebody who's been a part of this organization for a long time, what really stands out in your mind when you think of therapy dogs? Because it's not just about, helping kids with reading. I mean, there's veterans, there's so many organizations or different factions of people you were talking about.
Right.
For you, what stands out in your mind when you think of this?
The main thing is our executive director, Max Woodfin, has a statement. He just said, letting dogs really be dogs. And so some of our dogs know all kinds of tricks. Some of them, are large or small, all over the board. But the main thing, it's just that absolutely non-judgmental, unconditional love. And being able to go into a situation, and for me, I've spent a lot of time working with reading program with kids who have dyslexia. And so you get into that environment and the child just gets totally focused on, I'm reading to the dog, and I don't care if I mess up. And it's so funny that it's almost uncontrollable. They might sit there, and even if they say, oh, I really don't like dogs that much, and the next thing you see the hand creep over and they start to pet him, and the next thing they're lying on top of the dog like a lounge chair. Or especially, in a hospital where there's times when I don't know what the right words to say to either the patient or the family, but the dog just knows how to make that connection, and it's all about the dog, and that, 3 or 4 minutes that the dog is spending with them might be the absolute highlight of their entire stay. They may not have any family or friends around, and so it's just for a moment not being able to think about anything else but this dog who's just hanging out with you.
And also, for me personally, when I'm around animals, I get anxiety a lot. And for me, whenever I'm around a cat or a dog, I feel that going down, the anxiety levels in myself go down, and I just feel more relaxed with animals. I'm sure you see that as well, right?
I do, and I echo that same thing. We first did a lot of work in Austin State Hospital, and to tell you the truth, being in that environment was for me very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I definitely would not have volunteered if it wasn't for my dog. And that same thing, feeling comfortable in this space where I normally wouldn't, and also just seeing the unbelievable change that a dog could have, with somebody in 30 seconds. For example, one of my favorite stories from there was a young woman in her 20s just sitting on a park bench. And so I sat down next to her, and my dog got up right between us, and she started petting the dog. And I asked, if she'd ever had a dog, and we had this short conversation and went back and forth and seemed fine. And I walked off with this staff member, and she said, that was amazing. And I said, what's amazing about that? She said, that's the most she's talked in 6 weeks. And so It wasn't about me, it was about the dog, and everybody has some kind of a dog story, and being able to connect back to that. It's not about me, it's just them sharing this great moment with the dog.
So you all get connected with different groups like veterans, or as you said, you volunteer at the state hospital. How does the organization work in that way, and how do you get the dogs and all of that? How does it all come together?
Sure. So all of the dogs are our own, and this isn't like a service dog that everybody asks, well, can I buy one of your dogs? No, they're our personal dogs, but they've gone through a certification process that we know that they are going to be handle themselves well in all these environments. We also require all of our teams to get recertified every year. There isn't any age, breed, or size requirement. In fact, the more diverse, the better. Some people want a teacup poodle on their lap. Some people want a huge, Pyrenees on the floor to roll around with. And then there's just a great American mutt. Somebody walks in the room and says, that's exactly like the dog I had when I was 10 years old, and there's this immediate bond. So now I believe we're up to about 140 active dog and handler teams. And so what happens is we are constantly getting requests from organization, can you come visit us? And so our executive director will normally go check out the situation and find out if it's a good fit for us. And then it's a matter of finding, do we have enough volunteers that we can commit there on a regular basis? And as you can imagine, there's constantly a waiting list of organizations that need our services, and it's just all about bandwidth.
What was it about this that really became a passion for you and being a part of this organization?
Sure. I grew up on a farm, and so we're constantly around animals and just having that general appreciation for both domestic and wildlife. And the first lab we had was a puppy we found on the side of the road, and she just had this unbelievable personality. And I had heard that there are different ways that you could volunteer with a dog. And so I got involved with a program at Austin State Hospital called Pet Partners. And so we were there for over a year, and then I heard of Divine Canines, and they had a much wider array of places that we could visit. So I think it was in 2009 that I started doing work with them. Subsequently, was on the board, and then I started the whole fundraising pack, and particularly the focus on Barks for Beers.
And speaking of that, you do have a fundraiser that's going to be coming up soon. It's an annual fundraiser, right?
It is.
As you said, Barks for Beers. Can you talk about that and how that works if people want to contribute and help out?
I know that I'm jaded, but it absolutely is the most fun and the best fundraiser because everybody wins in it. So what we do is we partner up with local breweries, and as you know, living in Austin, we have an amazing brewery scene. And the event this year, it basically runs the month of May, but we start that weekend a little early, so April 29th through May 31st. And I have to do a shout out to Brian Smittle at Thirsty Planet. When I had the idea, a friend connected us, and he really helped me hone this event, from the brewery side to make sure we had a win. We had a win for Divine Canines as a fundraiser. We had a win for the participants. It's a great deal. And then we had a win for the breweries because we're putting, new customers right into their tasting room. The concept has basically stayed the same since the beginning. So each year we do a custom pint glass, and it lists all the breweries who are participating. But the magic is the card inside it, which this is called your pause port, because it's your pause port to a great time. This is last year's, but this year I'm happy to say we have 30 breweries, and you go to any one of the participating breweries and you buy these two for $30. And then during the month of May, you get to go to all the other 29 breweries for a free pour.
Oh, wow. So you could kind of go all around town for the free. Yeah.
Absolutely. And all the breweries are dog friendly. And in addition to this being a great fundraiser, this is also a huge recruiting vehicle for us because people will be out there with their dogs and they see our dogs with the vests and they ask how the program works. And then the next thing you know, we're booked up for several months of classes because people have said, I think my dog could do this and I think it would be rewarding for me.
I was going to ask about that. So that is one of the ways that you do get people to take part. And how long is that process to train their dog or to have your animal become a therapy dog?
So the first thing is we require a CGC or Canine Good Citizen rating, and this is something that you can get at most kennels. They'll have a certified trainer that can say, yes, indeed, your dog passes this. It's a standard AKC obedience. And then we have a class that runs about 5 weeks. It's every Saturday. I think it's 3 hours each. And we have an extraordinary trainer, Paul Mann, who's actually one of the founders of the organization. And what he really focuses on is making sure that that bond that you have with your dog is not just obedient sometimes, but all the time. and they try to get you used to the different kinds of environments that you're going to be subjected to. So, if you're in a mental institution, there's going to be some behavior that's going to be pretty non-standard. What if you take your dog into a classroom and there's 30 kindergartners grabbing at it? So we don't say this particular dog is good with kids, this particular dog is good in correctional facilities. We want any of our dogs and teams to be able to go any one of our locations. So there's a lot of focus on making sure that you and your dog can handle these different environments. We also do what we call like a lot of specialty visits. These are what we call like the dessert visits, because they're just so fun and the dogs have a great time. So a big one has become doing study breaks at UT and even Texas State. So during finals, the students are really stressed, and especially the ones in December, they're already thinking about, I'm going home, or in May I'm going to go home. I have a dog at home, and so it just strikes this unbelievable chord with students. And so a lot of it is just going and letting the dogs be dogs, and the kids come hang out with it. And those are really, really fun, and like the dogs just think like they're having a spa day. There's no stress. It's just a lot of great attention.
And even watching them now, it's just, there's nothing like having dogs around and animals around, because they do the funniest things. One thing I wanted to talk about, you said the organization's been around for around 18 years,
Correct.
Right? So, when you think about mental health and that topic, I feel like over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, that has become more of a topic that is, we hope, becoming less taboo. People are addressing it more, and you're hearing about it more just in the media in general, because there was a time when people kind of want to hide that stuff and
Yes.
sweep it under the rug. Have you seen an increase over that time that the organization's been around, or just since you've been involved, of more people kind of utilizing therapy dogs for that very reason? Because I really do think that there has been an awakening when it comes to the topic of mental health, and people realizing not only how important it is for, whether it's a veteran or somebody who's in a hospital, but just people's mental health in general.
I think that's an excellent question, and the answer is yes. That there's definitely more awareness, and when you think about, for instance, the visits to a university, I mean, underlying there, we call it a stress relief, but there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of potential for a really unsettling mental state, and so stress relief, or call it whatever you want, a lot of it is we're hoping to alleviate whatever anxiety that they have at that time. Same thing, particularly with PTSD, if we're visiting soldiers, from Fort Hood, it's almost impossible to not think that that's an element. And again, for our dogs, they don't care about labels. They don't care if it's anxiety or if it's a mental health break or whatever you call it. They're just there to hopefully make somebody feel better. And so I think that's the other element we talked about earlier, is just dogs being completely non-judgmental. They don't have a label on it. They don't care what kind of day you're having. They just want to make it better. So yes, I think there absolutely is more awareness, and I can't think of really a better way to do it than to introduce a dog into that situation.
In your own experience being out with the therapy dogs, and yours specifically, what are some stories that stand out to you that really kind of touched you in doing this?
So there are two stories that I have. One was from the ICU, and we went into the room, and we happen to be fortunate that we have a volunteer who's a nurse there, and so she kind of tells us the lay of the land. I think this would be a great person to go visit. So we go in to see this gentleman. I don't remember his name, so we'll just say he's Mr. Smith. And there's a chaplain in the room. And so I'm not a medical professional, but it was really interesting because normally when you go into ICU, there's somebody who has tubes and leads and everything all over him. And I don't even know if this guy had an IV in him, which is really unusual. And so the chaplain was smart enough to know that he'd been trumped by the dog, and he kind of backed out of the picture. And I had Shiner, and I said, "Is it okay if the dog gets on the bed?" Because I love dogs. And so Shiner gets up there, and again, I can't tell what's wrong with him, and so she just lies across his lap, and he's having the best time. I said, "Is she hurting you?" And he said something like, "She can't hurt. What's wrong with me is really deep inside," which I had no idea what that meant. But we had a nice visit, and we actually got him to sign a waiver because I said, "Can I take a picture? Because this is just such a great moment." He's like, "That's great." So the next week I go back and I see our same volunteer there, and I said, by the way, how's Mr. Smith? And she said, oh, he died. And I felt like I had just been totally sucker punched. I just, what do you mean? And she said, oh, he died the day after you left. And I felt, I mean, just completely shocked because he didn't look that unhealthy. And she could see the look on my face, just total anguish. And she said, no, you don't understand. She said, the last day of his life, all he could talk about was the dog. You changed his world. That's all he cared about. He may have been in physical pain, he didn't show it. All he talked about was your dog. And you know, that's a pretty powerful thing, that somebody's sitting there literally on their deathbed and you said, well, what would you like? Would you like the Rolling Stones to play a concert? Would you like $10 million? One of those things might make you happy, but it might be, yeah, this 5 minutes with this dog and just this, you know, completely unbridled objective love was it. So that's on one end. And then on the other end of the spectrum, happened to also be at the ICU in St. David's. And as I mentioned, one of the things that Barks for Beers allows us to do is take really good care of our volunteers. So all of the teams get their own trading cards. So anyway, went in to see this gentleman, and again, not a medical professional. If I had to guess, I think maybe he had a brain tumor. So he had all these tubes coming out. He had a massive suture in his head, but he seemed to be doing very well. So he was definitely on the positive side. Had a couple of family members sitting in the room with him, and he was having lunch, and I said, well, would you like to see the dog? He goes, yeah. So Shiner jumps up on the bed, having a great time, eating his lunch, and we get ready to go. And I said, okay, by the way, I'd like to leave you one of Shiner's trading cards. And he looks at it and he says, this is great. This is great. And I'm kind of shocked. I said, well, I'm glad you like the trading card. He says, no, you don't understand. When I go back to work, I'm going to take this card and I'm going to pin it to the wall in my office. And people are going to walk in and they say, who's the dog? And I say, I don't know. And they're going to say, who owns it? And I'm going to say, I don't know. And they're like, I don't get it. And I'm going to say, yeah, some guy I didn't know brought some dog I didn't know to come see me in the hospital, and none of you sons of bitches did.
Oh my God. That's great. I love that.
Yes.
So every time that you all go to visit someone, you take the trading card of the
Absolutely.
dog? Okay. And I would assume too that this also helps in passing along to other people that may be interested as well, right?
Definitely. We've definitely received calls of who's that organization, and they, you know, we've got our website and everything on it. And kind of another story in the ICU was there was a woman who definitely was on the rebound. She had 4 or 5 family members in the small room, and I had no idea what was going on. But I noticed that there was something kind of with her hand that looked like it. Not something that would cause her to be in the ICU, but it looked like her hand was almost frozen in this position. And so the dog got on the bed, we had a nice little visit, and then after we got ready to leave, and I said, oh, would you like a trading card? And she said, yes, I would. And then she turns her hand over, and she had not let go. There were 4 trading cards of all the dogs who had come to see her while she was in there, and she had not let go of them the entire time.
In terms of what would you say the majority of the visits that you go out to are? Is there like an area where you see more types of visits, whether it's with, you know, like you said, ICU or?
To be honest, it's such a wide array, and since we have so many different locations, unless you see somebody you don't even know what those sites are. So there's, you know, probably 80% of our sites that I've never been to. And so, like I said, it's a wide array. Definitely the ones that are picking up is the one-off requests from, you know, UT, the UT Law School, the Texas State. In fact, we're scheduled to go to Texas State the first week of May. And I'm a UT alum, love what they do, but I have to tell you, Texas State, they throw an event that is amazing. And I think it was the second year I went down there, it was the closest feeling to a rock star. And they sent us up to the 4th floor, and the elevator's open, and there's already 200 kids lined up.
Oh, wow.
And they start screaming. And I was like the closest
They're like rock stars.
They are. And the phones come out, and everybody's screaming. And it so happened that they had a student was writing a paper, so they collected all these different stats on it. And so we were there 2 hours on a Monday and then 2 hours on a Tuesday. And during that total 4-hour time, 1,680 students came to see our dogs.
Wow.
Yes.
When it comes to the actual fundraiser that we were talking about earlier, how does that funding help the organization? Where does that go? How does it keep you all operating?
Great question. And so again, we're a nonprofit,
Yeah.
and to be honest, almost hand to mouth, and hoping that we're going to make it, hoping there's going to be a really good benefactor to us, and not really being able to plan a lot or have the financial stability. So we run very lean. We have only one paid employee. He's phenomenal, Max Woodfin, our executive director. But the other thing is it allows us to keep our training costs low. As I mentioned, Paul, our trainer, is absolutely extraordinary. And if we were to hire him, or he was to charge his normal rate for the different classes, it could be cost prohibitive. Mm-hmm. So Barks for Beers allows us to have a little more certainty to be able to actually lay out an annual budget and not worry about, well, what if we don't get this grant? What does that mean? Do we have to scale back? Do we have to cut services? What does it mean? So for us, being able to, as I mentioned, take really good care of our volunteers, they get the trading cards, the shirts that they wear to volunteer, we replace those, they get vests, they get hats. We even had custom-made masks during the pandemic. So it allows our volunteers to really enjoy to where they don't have to think like, my personal job is to fundraise to make sure I keep the organization afloat. It's just about, I get to focus on taking my dog out and making a lot of people very happy.
And the good thing is we are starting to come out of the pandemic. More things are open now. You're seeing more celebrations. But for nonprofits, especially for yours, I'm sure the last couple of years have been difficult because a lot of what you do does depend on fundraising,
Yes.
at least, on businesses being open. And that wasn't the case the last couple of years.
You're absolutely right. And like most organizations, we had to cancel Barks for Beers in 2020. And again, had we not had some successful years before that, it would have been incredibly difficult. And so we knew that we were going to be able to weather the storm. And we were one of the first really big events coming out in 2021 in May. And keep in mind, we start our planning basically into December, first part of January, to get everything lined up to go. So it was a little bit of a risk, and we just felt, I think the public is going to be ready for it, and they were. And I don't know ever of a time before where we would be out at the breweries with our dogs and people would come up and say, thank you for doing this. Some people have structured their family reunions around Austin in May. They go visit breweries together. Some people are just like, this is the forcing function to go find that cool new brewery. So I think this year is going to be huge.
So are y'all out at some of the breweries during May then? Will you be out at different ones, or how does that work in terms of, because people can ask about it, but will they see you there visibly at some of these?
Absolutely, and since so many of the breweries are open, some of them are open every day and for long hours, we obviously can't have a volunteer there all the time. But yes, this is also a great social event for our volunteers, because as I mentioned, if you don't volunteer at the same site, there are so many volunteers that you never get to see and hang out with. And so this is a great time for them to go and basically be a proponent of Divine Canines and just talk to a lot of people about how's the program work, how do I get my dog involved. So yes, it's a big event for the organization financially, but it's also, like I said, a little bit of a social event for us and a great recruiting vehicle.
About how many volunteers do you estimate that you have currently?
So I think we're around 140 teams, that being at least one dog handler and at least one dog. Sometimes there's more than one handler. For instance, a trend that we're seeing that I think is fantastic is somebody is having their child, their teenager, also go through the certification process to where they can go on the visits. And I think that is an amazing way for a young person to not only build this great bond with their dog, but go into some of these different places and realize how fortunate you are that you get to go visit and leave. You're not there.
We've talked about what your service provides to other people, but on a personal note, what has this done for you?
As I mentioned early on, particularly with the Austin State Hospital, that's a perfect example of something that you know, was disconcerting for me, and I wouldn't want to go in there. My mother died of Alzheimer's, and so I don't know if there is subconsciously this way of like, can I give back to that group? Can I, you know, by working with some of the people that have some mental issues? And so for me, it was also, even though there's the funny stories like I relayed, there's also this sense of how incredibly fortunate you are, that you're healthy and functioning, and you're visiting a hospital instead of, you know, possibly living out your last hours there. So I think it has been incredibly humbling, and it also is a way to not take the spotlight. It's not about me, it's about the dog. I mean, I could go visit a patient 50 times and it wouldn't have the impact that just 5 minutes, you know, with one of my dogs is. So I think it's being able to just kind of step back and truly let, you know, the dog work its magic. And so it's humbling, but at the same time, it's also, you know, incredibly inspiring, incredibly rewarding, because you can feel like I made somebody's day better. You know, I helped a kid get over a hurdle of reading aloud. You know, I was maybe the really bright spot of somebody who's been in the ICU for a week. And sometimes it's more about the family. The patient may have no idea you're there. It's all the family needs it, or the staff members at the facility. So it's rewarding, and now it's one of those things that, you know, it's kind of difficult for me to not have that, you know. And that was, like I said, during the pandemic, I know I wasn't the only one that felt like this is the time when we could do the most good, and we're not capable of doing it.
Where do people go to find information about the organization Divine Canines?
DivineCanines.org. It's got everything out there. It has a whole photo gallery of all of our dogs. You can go on there and read a little bio of them. It also has some of this information if you're thinking about getting interested. Well, what is a Canine Good Citizen rating? We have an example of that. It lists some of the different places that we visit. And for this time of the year, we have a separate landing page that's all about Barks for Beers. So it will have this is just a stylized map, but it has a completely detailed one. It lists all of the breweries and all the different locations. We have what we call an amenities page. So a lot of these people decide, how am I going to spend this weekend? Okay, on Saturday, I'm going to the Southwest, guys. And so they'll say, all right, I'm going to start here, go to this one, and then they'll look and say, oh, this place has a full kitchen, so I'm going to end my day there. So that's the best place to learn about our organization, and this time of the year, for sure, Barks for Beers.
And it lists like all the different breweries.
Absolutely.
And
everything, their hours of operations. Do they have a kidscape? Do they serve things other than beer? You know, what can I expect when I go there? And again, all the breweries are dog friendly.
Is there anything else that you want to add about Divine Canines?
I would just like to reiterate that there are constantly organizations on the waiting list, and it's all about, you know, can we get more teams? So if you're even thinking about doing it, please come check us out. Unfortunately, we're a little backlogged because of the pandemic. We weren't able to do the classes. I believe it was just this last Saturday we graduated our second class, and I think that we're booked maybe for about the next 3. But we'd be happy to put you on a wait list, and if somebody cancels, we can get you in earlier, and you can start learning about what are the types of things that my dog and I are going to need to learn. And it's just incredibly rewarding. And again, what greater way to go spend a day than taking your dog out and making somebody's day better?
Well, thank you so much, Mike, and we'll see you next time on The Marino Show.